Do you have a tendency to get stuck in fantasy love and or limerence? If so, this video is definitely going to help you, and I totally relate to you if you do. I'm going to be giving you 5 things that you can do immediately to get yourself out of these patterns when you notice yourself kind of in the fantasy and the limerence. Before we get started, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name's Adam. I just want to let you know I'm doing some free breakthrough calls. There's a link pinned in the comment section below. What these are they are 30-minute calls where we get on Zoom, we go over your vision for your life, what you're looking to create, and then we get into what's been stopping you, blocking you, the emotions that are coming up that are preventing you from creating this life, and then what you can do about it. So before we get into the 5 things, very briefly, I have an extensive history with fantasy love and limerence. It's one of my favorite pastimes. I can't tell you how many times I've been stuck in a relationship with somebody that I'm not in a relationship with. Now, there are many multidimensional aspects to this conflict or problem or whatever you want to call it, this issue, this dynamic. I've covered them in other videos. In this video, I'm just going to be covering some of the more practical things you can do. But just very briefly, I'm going to tell you a quick story about my pattern. There was a time when I saw this particular girl perform in a play, okay? Now, this was somebody that I had known. I had performed with her a number of years before. I hadn't seen her in a while, hadn't thought of her in a while. I saw her in this play, and immediately I just felt this draw to her. I felt like, oh my God, I'm falling in love with her. I want to be with this person. And so what I did was what I did back then. I began to fantasize about it. I began to feel what it would feel like to be with her. I began to script out every possible scenario, from marriage to dates to everything to conversations. And I walked around with this for weeks, maybe months in my head. Now, because I was so attached to the idea of what this looked like and how it felt, I was actually too afraid to even call her to ask her out. I went probably a month and a half or so before I actually had the courage to finally physically pick up the phone, call her, ask her if she wanted to go out with me. And her answer was, yeah, no. And this whole fairy tale field of energy that I'd built up just crashed. And I was devastated. Who else does this or has done this in the past? Well, it can be very painful, very frustrating, and very unnecessary. So here are 5 things that you can do if you start to find yourself building this fairy tale fantasy love field of energy. 1, call it out. Sometimes we just need to call out the pattern. So if you know it's fantasy, say it's fantasy. Just say out loud, this is fantasy. This is fantasy. This is not real. The other thing that you can do is ask. So if you have any connection to your higher self, spirit guides, angels, God, whatever you believe in that's greater than you, your subconscious mind, simply ask, kind of on a regular basis, is this real or is it a fantasy? Wait, see what you feel, see what you get, and see what comes back from the reality around you. Just acknowledging the pattern is the first step to shifting it. The second thing that you can do, this is an exercise that I was taught by the women who've taught me, I trained with as far as somatic trauma release. So what you can do is you can start to tap on your body when you notice yourself going into this pattern and say the following: this is my body belongs to me. And tap all the way up and down your feet, your legs, your shoulders, everywhere. This is my body belongs to me. This is my body belongs to me. The reason this starts to work is because a lot of times the fantasies that we go into are from dissociation. And the dissociation comes from trauma, it comes from childhood, it comes from not being able to get what we wanted or needed, and so then we go into our imaginations to create it, which is okay if you know how to bring it into reality. But when you're off running around in a fantasy that's not going to happen, the more you're disconnected from your body, the more you believe in it. So when you start to tap on your body and notice your nervous system, you will subtly begin to break this pattern. It might take a while, but you're going to begin the journey back into the now, into your nervous system, out of the dissociation, and you will start to correct this sort of thing. The third thing you can do when you notice yourself building these fantasy patterns, write out your expectations. Write them on a piece of paper or type them out on your computer or your phone. It doesn't matter where you write them. Just write them down somewhere so your mind can see them. What are you expecting to happen? And literally consult with the fairy that's concocting this enormous tale in your head, what that fairy thinks is going to happen. Do you expect the guy that you're falling in love with to break up with his wife tomorrow and take you on a carnival cruise and profess his undying love for you and build a house overnight in the woods and like have 6 children? And I mean, what is the fantasy? What are you expecting? Because when the mind sees it on paper, it begins to notice reality. Is this real? Is this possible? Is this likely to happen? And something I would say, as far as the limerence and fantasy love pattern is concerned, if it's not now, it's not ever. Okay, so if the person isn't available now, presume they aren't available ever. And I know this is so hard to accept because we all want to be like, well, maybe later they'll change. They could change later. The thing is, the universe generally doesn't give it to you until you've let go of attachment. So if you're still hoping they're going to come back later, you're not letting go of the attachment. And generally, when it's time for something, it happens. If it's not happening now, it's probably not going to happen. But it can happen with somebody else. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen in the way that you think it's going to happen right now. The fourth thing you can do, if you notice yourself in this fantasy limerence pattern, ask whether you believe in this or not, ask your higher self, ask the universe, ask your guides to clear any past life karma with the soul of this person. This is one of the biggest things that happens. Very few people talk about it. It's a very intricate, complicated concept. You have to have some belief or awareness of past lives, quantum entanglement, energetic cords, etc. You may be resonating with an aspect of this person's energy that at some point in time related in the way that you want. The problem is it's not what's happening now in this life. And sometimes we get absorbed in these past experiences or these soul memories, and our imagination just runs wild with it because the human mind doesn't know what to do with it. So pray, meditate, do energy work, do energy clearing, come into your body a little bit and ask to have any karmic cords, ties, stories, experiences that are no longer for your highest good and the highest good of all to be cleared and released so that you can be shown what this dynamic is in the here and now. And the last thing, the number 5 thing you can do if you find yourself in these fantasy patterns is take any kind of action to get new information whatsoever. So if you think someone might be attracted to you, or you're attracted to them and you want to be in a relationship with them, fucking ask. Ask them out, ask them how they feel, tell them how you feel, do any reality-based step to break that limerence fantasy love pattern that's building momentum, because the truth is a lot of times we do that because we're afraid of the answer being no. But if you can't accept the no, you're going to stay dissociated and just end up devastating yourself, like I said I did at the beginning of the video, with 6 or 7 weeks of, a non-real like belief structure that collapsed and, was incredibly painful. Take any kind of action at all. A lot of times, even if it's not in relationship to getting more information on what's going on with this person, just taking an action to go out of your comfort zone will help, because we go into the fantasy regardless of what it is because we're afraid to bring the things that we're feeling in the fantasy into reality. Take a class, take a public speaking class, do Toastmasters, do comedy, take a performance class, like go hang out with new people, anything, be of service, like anything to get out of yourself that's in the reality and interactive. Anything that you're afraid of, whatever it is. But particularly if you can get information about this particular scenario, helps. because it will help train your mind to look for information based in the now, based in reality, not letting it run wild in your fantasy. And the other thing that you can do too is write out the story. But like write out the story in far as a script or a short story, but know that it may not be real, but you can take that part of your imagination and give it something real to do. Because if you wrote a script about this relationship with this person that you want to have, but you never get the relationship, but you could turn it into a very successful script or a short story that a lot of other people can read. And that's training your imagination to work for you instead of work against you. Anyway, let me know how this goes. Please take a second to like and subscribe to the channel. I have a free energy clearing in the description below. Other than that, thank you so much. I'd love to know how you're doing with this, if you have any revelations or breakthroughs or suggestions. Other than that, thank you so much. Until next time, and bye-bye.